Phillip, are you on? Hey everyone, I'm just checking in with Phillip and we'll get started once he gets on the call. Thanks guys for patiently waiting. We're attempting to get a hold of Phillip to make sure. He is getting on as we speak. Thank you for waiting. Phillip, you on yet? Hey y'all, I unmuted you so we can talk.
Hi, Lena.
Hi, Tammy. I think you're the only one who hasn't muted themselves, so I'm just, Philip and Mia spoke and he's trying to get on.
Okay.
I unmuted myself.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Everyone having a good day?
Oh
Yes,
yeah,
thank you.
I won a thing at the team meeting. Wasn't that exciting?
I know, I saw that. Are you gonna go?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Tammy, what'd you win?
A ticket to go to the Tony Giordano event on January 29th.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was so excited for Angie and Mia. I wish I would have put my business card in because maybe I would have won then. And we're all gonna go buy lotto tickets now.
I feel like I need to.
Good.
But there's a problem. If y'all win, you cannot quit your job.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
I said if I win, I'm gonna give my all my staff a raise, and someone goes a raise. You're not gonna split it with them. I was like, no, they still gotta work. They gotta earn their money. Philip, is that you?
That is me. I finally got that.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to mute everyone else now except for you.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks so much for having me on the call today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for getting on. We appreciate your fashionably tardiness.
That's me.
Okay, well, we're going to get started to respect everybody's time. And again, I really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to speak with you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So, as always, this is our, I believe, fifth webinar call, and I always like to start it off with just telling us about you and your story and how you ended up in real estate and in it with Keller Williams.
Awesome. Well, yeah, that's a great story. So I went to Texas A&M and originally started out as an architecture major. After a semester, I realized that that's not really what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to be somewhere in the realm of residential construction, residential sales. So I switched over to construction science here at Texas A&M. I was in that program, and it was awesome. I was excited because when I got into the program, job placement was 99% right out of college, and the average starting salary was between 75 and 80,000, which was to college freshman. That was awesome. So I was like, great, this is what I want to do. I loved it. By the time I graduated in 2009, the economy had kind of come tumbling down. Job placement for our program was less than 20%, and the average significant drop. The company that I worked for, that I interned for, had no space for me, and I had my real estate license at that point, and I figured, hey, if I can make it now, once the economy picks up, I'll be in a great place. So went ahead and joined Keller Williams and took all the training and education they had. After 2 years of being in the business, I moved back to College Station to run the office as the CEO and team leader, where I did that for 3 years, grew the office to about $250 million in production. and then decided to get back into production with one of the national expansion teams at Keller Williams, which is what I'm doing now. Part of what I do on that team is coach and train agents on our team, and that's kind of one of my big passions. So being on calls like this is what I like to do. So I'm glad to be able to share some knowledge with everybody today.
Thank you. And just for timeline's sake, when did you switch over from being an agent to a team leader?
So I was in production from about 2010 to 2013. And 2013 is when I went back into when I became a team leader. And then early last year, right after February, is when I went back into production.
Gotcha. So we have some of the same timelines.
Yeah.
I also got in the business in 2010. Okay, so tell us about your first year in real estate. What did that look like for you? Where did your clients come from? What was your production?
All right. Yeah. So the first year in real estate was a little rocky. I was one of those people that came to Keller Williams knowing that there was tons of models and systems available, but thinking that I was smart enough to reinvent the wheel. And I learned very quickly that it's much easier to not reinvent the wheel. So it was a little bit rocky. I think my first year of production, the average price point in the market that I was in was about 130,000. And I think I did right at about 2 million in production my first year, which was better than some veterans were doing at the time, but wasn't good enough for me. Mm-hmm. So I tried to redo every model and system that Keller Williams had to offer. I tried to reinvent every single one, and it just didn't work.
So what was your eye-opener to not do that and to just go back to the model?
I think the eye-opening experience was I was up at maybe like 3 o'clock in the morning one night trying to create these lead gen systems, and I think I hadn't slept in almost like 24 hours.
Sounds awesome.
So yeah, it wasn't good at all. And that's when I told myself, okay, you know what? I'm probably doing something wrong here.
Okay, and so your second year, what did you end up doing then?
So second year, had literally doubled in production, a little bit more than doubled. So I was, I think, at about 5 million in production my second year. Much easier time. I had started moving into a training role at that time too. I came to realize that training was a big passion for me and coaching agents was a big passion for me. I was only in the business for a year at that point. So I was actually teaching the e-edge system and the technology that Keller Williams has, being that I was the youngest person in that office. Mm-hmm. And I really realized that I really enjoyed that. So I was spending probably a quarter of my time teaching agents how to use the technology between our two offices that our company owns down in South Texas, which were about 45 miles apart. So I almost doubled my production with about half of the effort and got to add another source got to add the coaching aspect to my business at that point.
Awesome. And so going back to your first year, it sounds like we know what you wish you did differently, yet is there anything else outside of trying to reinvent the wheel with lead gen and processes that you would do differently, maybe with clients or something to that aspect?
Yeah, one of the big ones would definitely be working on my database. It's still to this day it's something that I can admit that I haven't perfected. I do a lot of other lead gen sources, but I always find that my database of my METs, those being the people that I do know, usually provide me a very good steady stream of leads and transactions. So in my first year of business, I didn't do that because I felt like, oh, well, I don't want to bother my friends and my family, and oh, I know that person, but I don't want them to feel like I'm calling them to ask for business because I haven't talked to them in a while. I really feel like that would have set me in a much better place if I really would have worked my database, and if I would have actually just put them into a database. Everybody was in my cell phone or on some social media website, but I never actually had any of them in an actual database.
Okay, good to know. And is there anything that you wouldn't have changed about your first year?
If there's anything that I would not have changed,
Mm-hmm.
I think attending the training and education classes. I went to all of them with the intent of, okay, I'm going to learn this, but that's not me, so I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to change it. But I think once my second year rolled around, I had been to plenty of training and education classes in our office at Keller Williams International. I had the chance to go up there for a couple of classes. So that was really kind of where I got to when I decided, let's get back to the basics. And at that time, they were teaching a class called Camp 443, which has now become the Ignite course. And I was very grateful that I did go through all those classes, because then once the second year rolled around, I said, okay, it's back to basics. It's back to, I already know what I should be doing. Let's dig into that Camp 443 material and let's start from there.
Oh, awesome. So that kind of leads us up to where you're at, because then you became a team leader, which is a CEO of an office, and that takes a lot of responsibility and lead generation because you do a lot of recruiting. And now you're into this regional expansion role. And so we got ourselves up to 2015-16. I want to
Yep.
Our topic is dialing for dollars, which it comes down to also a terminology of circle prospecting. What
Correct.
is circle prospecting to you?
So yeah, that's a great. I'm glad that this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And I know I'll preface this with saying a lot of real estate agents don't like to get on the phone, and they say, "Yeah, I don't want to bother people," or I've heard every excuse. I mean, I've trained agents. I was the team leader of an office. I've heard every excuse from agents on why they're not going to get on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a very, very good and effective way to build your business. So with that said, circle prospecting is essentially picking a target area around a new listing, around a just sold, whether it may be in your farm area, so a geographic location that you decide this is where I want to be the neighborhood expert, and making phone calls to the people in that area. In my opinion, I feel like it's a little bit less intrusive than calling a for sale by owner or an expired. Even though those are great sources of leads, circle prospecting for me has become the main source of lead generation for me when it comes to listings and buyers and getting my listings sold. So to sum that up, it's essentially calling or contacting everybody around a certain listing or a certain area that you want to be a market expert in.
Okay, and so what made you choose this? Because like you said, it's not the typical, and I'll be the first one to admit, I did extreme open houses. I was holding 3-4 open houses a week. I refused to pick up the phone and do dialing, yet I door knocked for my open houses. So I would be the first to admit that this scared the crap out of me until I took bold. So what made you choose this as your lead gen method?
So I'll admit also that when I first got into the business, picking up the phone was one of the scariest things that I possibly could have done. I don't feel like I'm shy at all, but for some reason, I see in a lot of real estate agents, they are just afraid of picking up the phone. Some of the most social, outgoing agents I know are afraid of picking up the phone. I was in that group. I always tell new agents the story about when the very first expired phone call that I made. So the first kind of cold call I ever made was it was to an expired listing. I dialed the number, and as soon as it rang, I hung up, and I did that about 3 or 4 times. So their phone rang at least once, or it rang once, like 3 or 4 times, and I just kept hanging up. So finally, I kind of gave myself a pep talk, and I'm like, "Come on, get it together. You can do this." I called, and it was the most horrible call ever. I didn't know my scripts. I was nervous. It sounded like I was about to cry, and without having to say it, I didn't get the appointment. But I learned a big lesson there. When I hung up the phone, my hands were shaking, and I was like, "What is wrong with you? There's nothing that you're not going to die from making this call, Phil. Like you'll be okay." And so that was kind of my thought process going forward on that is you're not going to die. And I found it to be I find it to be a very effective use of time because you can reach a lot more people in a shorter period of time on the phone. So how I focused on this method of lead gen, is that your question? I kind of got all over the place.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I had heard agents talking about in one of the Keller Williams Facebook groups, they're like, oh, circle prospecting, circle dialing. And I was like, oh, okay, well, let's see what this is. And so I did it once with one of my listings. I called all the neighbors, called within about a quarter-mile radius from that house. And I picked up 2 other sellers, and I actually found the buyer for my listing in that first kind of round of circle prospecting. And I said, wow, this is great. And it helped me build kind of my rapport with the neighborhood so that when I did sell it, people kind of knew like, oh, that was the house that Phil sold.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like when you have that level of success off the bat, why would you stop? That would make no sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's great. And so let's kind of talk about what that all looks like. The circle prospecting, picking an area, that's easy. You could take a map, literally, if you really wanted to, you could take a map and throw a dart at it, right? And say, that's where I'm going to start. That's not the most effective method, and yet it works. Where do you get the information for these homeowners? How do you get their phone numbers? How does that work?
Good question. That's a great question, and I'll start with kind of picking the area. I mean, while throwing a dart, you can definitely do that, but I like to be a lot more strategic about it. So there's a couple of different scenarios where I'll circle prospect. The first one is my geographic farm area. So that includes my neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods. That's where I've chosen where I want to be the neighborhood expert. I want everybody in those neighborhoods when they're ready to buy or sell to think of me. So that was the first area that I picked. Then after that, I circle prospect around every new listing. So especially if it's not in my farm area and I take a new listing, the first thing that I do when I take that listing is I call everybody around that. I'll call again when when it goes under contract, and I'll call again when it closes. So each listing gets at least 3 phone calls. Now, if you're a new agent, it doesn't necessarily, if you can get permission from someone in your office who has a listing in an area that you'd like to work, it's a great opportunity that way. It's a great opportunity to do it that way as well. Then if I represent a buyer and we close on a transaction, that's another time that I'll circle prospect. So that's another group of people that I'll call and just let them know that we closed that transaction if they knew anybody else that was looking to buy a home, sell a home, or invest in real estate. And so those are the groups of people that I pick from when it comes to circle prospecting. Now, getting the owner's information, this is sometimes the trickier part. If you're on a budget, there's definitely things like the whitepages.com. You can pull up, you can actually make a list of everybody who's in the neighborhood and then look them up in a phone book or the white pages. There are other services out there. I spend a lot of time on the phone, so I use a couple of different auto dialers because my goal is to reach as many people as possible every day. So Mojo Dialer has a way that you can pull up information for neighborhoods, and it'll give you neighborhood numbers, as well as a service called Cole Realty Resource. That's kind of my big go-to. It was a little bit of an investment, and I always tell people, don't spend money if you're not going to commit to something. And this was something that I committed to, so I spent some money on Cole Realty Resource. And the way that works is I put in an address, and I can put either I can draw on the map which phone numbers I want, or I can just hit that I want a radius of 1/4 mile up to 2 miles, and then it'll pull those numbers for me. But sometimes it really is the white pages that works the best, and that's where I'll pull some numbers from time to time. So it is a little bit of a time-consuming thing, but if you do it right, it definitely can work well.
So what's great, and I'll just make a plug for anyone in our office, is the Woodlands office does pay for a Cole Realty subscription for our agents. So we actually have that availability to use that for no cost. So
that's awesome. It really is. Cole is a service that I've come to find is just phenomenal. They do provide phone numbers, and then upgraded versions of the package have cell phone numbers and email. So it's a great way to data mine. I mean, you don't have to do any of the data mining. It's all done for you.
Yeah. So you get the numbers, and I know auto dialers, if you're using something like Mojo, you can import those numbers and then it auto dials, correct?
Correct.
So talk to me about your space and how you go about the lead gen time.
Yeah, so I actually switched to a standing desk about a year ago, and it has really made all the difference because I used to prospect by phone when I first got in the business. As a team leader, I used to prospect for agents, also sitting down, and I just never could. There was days where it was really hard to get going. So standing up is a great way to keep the energy going. It keeps me focused. I think I've self-diagnosed myself with ADHD, so standing up also helps keep me a little bit more focused. The desk, I spent a long time looking for a standing desk that was affordable, and actually found a really good desk at IKEA. So I have I'm not getting paid by IKEA to endorse them, but I think if you're looking for a standing desk, IKEA's got a great standing desk. And so I've got that. I've got my scripts pulled up on my monitor. I've got a very big monitor, so I've got my scripts on one side of my screen, and then I've got my the auto dialer in the screen with all the phone numbers right next to that. In the morning, our team will usually do some kind of script practice. So I'll usually call my script practice partner, and we'll practice scripts for about 30 minutes. And again, when I call her, we're practicing circle prospecting scripts, because that's kind of our focus. Sometimes when we're moving on to expireds and for sale by owners, we'll practice those scripts. But whatever phone calls I'm making that day, I make sure to spend 30 minutes practicing with somebody else on those scripts. At that point, and then it's smile and dial. I hit start and try to do a minimum of 2 to 3 hours on the phone, and then an hour of follow-up after that.
Okay, great. So quite a while. You're on that for a while.
Yeah. So I've got a big goal. The goal is usually 400 circle prospecting contacts a month. That's 100 a week. Woo. It's a big goal, but I've got a big transaction goal. So in order to make that, I have to hit 100 contacts a week when it comes to circle prospecting, and it's very simple to do if you really invest the time.
Okay, great. And so I hear the goal of the 100 circle prospecting contacts, right? Not dials.
Correct. Contact. Yeah, I always tell people not to confuse dials with contacts.
Correct. It's voice to voice. And so what is the purpose of the conversation? So essentially that in the script we'll go into too.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different scripts that I use, and the purpose of the conversation is really to build rapport with people on your farm so that they remember you. The other purpose of the call is to find buyers for your listings, and then the third purpose of the call is to find sellers who are thinking about selling in your farm area. And the scripts are different depending on which one we're using. Mm-hmm. So, for example, let's say we just took a listing. It would sound something like, "Hey, this is Phillip with Experience Real Estate at Keller Williams. We recently listed a home in your neighborhood on Rugen Lane. It has 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, and it's listed at $190,000. I was calling to see if you or anyone you know might be interested in receiving more information about this home or any others that are currently on the market in the neighborhood. And then at that point, that's kind of just the lead into it. And one of the scripts that I think that I really always, people get a chuckle out of sometimes when I call, and I like to, I'm kind of a goofy guy, so I like to use humor when I'm calling these people because I don't want it to sound like a robot. And so one of the things is, hey, this is Phillip with Experience Real Estate at Keller Williams. I was calling because we just listed the house right down the block from you, and you're in luck because I wanted to call you first to let you pick your neighbor. Who do you know that's thinking about moving in this neighborhood? And a lot of people, it kind of like they stop and think like, what did he just say? And I'm like, yeah, no, I want to give you the first opportunity to pick your neighbor. Who do you know? And then a lot of times I'll get a chuckle out of that, and they're like, well, we're not sure who we know yet. And then it's a good way to lead into it. And I try to ask them a lot of questions when I've got someone on the phone.
So let's say that I'm this person, okay? And I say, well, I don't know of anyone. Then where do you go with that?
Okay, well, you know what, Lena, thanks for taking a moment to think about that. Would it be okay if I ask you a quick couple of questions about your neighborhood?
Yeah, I only have 2 minutes, though.
Okay, that's fine. It won't take much of your time. So tell me a little bit about what specifically you like about that neighborhood. This is what I like to know for buyers that come along.
Well, we love that it's a secluded neighborhood. Neighbors are very family oriented, and it's a great, just quiet and safe location.
Awesome. So you like the safety and just kind of the culture that in that neighborhood, and you like that it's quiet, right?
Yes, we do.
Great. Yeah, that's definitely, I think buyers that are coming along would definitely love that too. So let me ask you this question. If you ever did move, where would that be to, hypothetically?
Well, we don't think we'll be moving anytime soon.
Okay. No, that's perfectly fine. But let's say you did want to move. I'm just thinking about kind of what's going on in this neighborhood, where people would go if they did want to leave this neighborhood. Obviously, most people, it doesn't seem like most people want to leave because it's a great place. But where do you think you would go from here? What would be kind of a dream location for you?
Well, most of our family is back in California, so we would probably end up there if anywhere else.
Oh, awesome. That's a great place. Yeah, I love California. I actually lived there for a couple of years, or for about a year.
What part?
But I actually lived in LA. I was working with an engineering firm there. What part of California is your family from?
Laguna Beach.
Laguna Beach, awesome place. I was there a couple of times, and I absolutely loved it. Well, I know that you told me you had 2 minutes, but let me ask you one more quick question. Would it be okay if I kept you up to date with what's going on in the neighborhood? I know you're probably, since you like the safety and kind of the culture in your neighborhood, when we find a buyer for this listing, would it be okay if we called you back to just let you know who they were and introduce them to you?
Yeah, sure, that's fine.
Perfect. And so I'd love to also email you a report of the most recent activity in your neighborhood. What's the best email address to send that to?
Lena@GroCoachingGroup.com.
Perfect. Well, I've got that down. Well, Lena, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to getting this house sold. If anybody else you know is thinking about buying or selling, we'd love to help them out, and we'd love to help you, especially in your neighborhood, to make sure to keep that keep that part of your neighborhood that you like with all the neighbors. We want to keep you connected with them. So feel free to reach out to us whenever you need to. But if not, we'll be in touch pretty soon.
Thank you, Phillip.
Thank you.
So that was awesome. You clearly know your script. Now I have two things. One, just to reiterate, you really reuse my word safety a lot. I noticed that you use the words I actually used and embedded them in my mind over and over again. Why would you do that?
It really, when you one of the biggest tips that I ever got when I got into real estate was that not everybody thinks the same way that I do. So if I can think the way that they do, it'll really help me connect with them. And that's what I'm trying to do on these phone calls, is connect with the person on the other end of the line. So using the word safety, again, that was one of the things that was obviously important to you. So I used it a couple of times, and it helps build that rapport, it helps build that connection, because they feel a little bit at home. And then I like to ask the person those questions about the family. So again, with a lot of agents, I always tell them use the Ford method to build rapport. So that's family, occupation, recreation, and dreams or goals.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good way to get people to kind of connect with you and feel comfortable with you. So if I can ask them about where their family is, again, I'm building that rapport with them, and I'm helping them feel at ease with me. And that's what I want to do. A lot of times, circle prospecting isn't always going to yield you results right now, but it's something that you have to be consistent with, so that when you call back again and say, hey, okay, Happy New Year. Did you get a chance to visit your family in Laguna Beach this holiday season? They know that you're paying attention to them.
Oh,
and I like to take a lot of notes with everybody that I talk to. If I have a conversation like that and they tell me that they've got family in Laguna Beach, I'm going to put that in my notes, so that when I call them again, when it goes under contract, or when I call them maybe next month, just to follow up and just say, hey, we're just calling to the neighborhood one more time. Has anything changed with your situation? I know that I've got some point of reference to talk to them about.
Awesome. And then the second one is I attempted to throw some objections in there, and I don't know if maybe you get nicer phone calls like that as much, and yet you didn't stop after the first time I said, no, I'm not moving. You went deeper.
Yeah.
So how many times would you ask that question before you would move on to the next piece of the conversation?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if this is the best way to do it, but I think somebody once told me to always ask 3 times.
Yeah.
If you get a no a third time, then it's kind of like, okay, it's time to back off. But a lot of times people are just our first instinct, and I get calls from telemarketers all the time. My first instinct is to say, no, I don't have time to talk to you.
Yep.
But one of the things that I always tell people is really come from contribution on these calls. You do have something that you can offer to them, and you're not just a salesman. And I don't think that real estate agents should look at themselves as just salesmen. You have skills, and you have a service that you offer. So it's really about the calls don't always go that well. I've had many people call or that I've called, yell at me, scream at me, say some nasty things, and you know what? You hit end. I always mark them, do not call back. Or sometimes I like to challenge, and I'll make a note to myself and say, oh, this person yelled at me. I'm going to call them again next month and see if they yell at me again, or see if this time they'll talk to me. Maybe I'm just a glutton for punishment, but it's going for no almost, and it's really just about connecting with these people, especially in a geographic farm area. You want to be able to just reach them multiple times. Like I said, sometimes they say no. Sometimes people are very impressed by me cold calling. In my neighborhood, I have someone who lives a couple blocks down, and he said, "Are you cold calling?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I am." And he said, "Wow." He said, "I'm in a sales job," and he said, "I don't think I could ever cold call. So I'm very impressed by what you're doing." So you get everything, but that's why it's a numbers game, and you just need to keep pushing forward.
Yeah, and so you got me to agree to follow up with me. So obviously you're going to follow up with me like you said you would once you get it under contract. What else does your follow-up look like?
So I did also ask you for your email address. Yeah. So I'll usually put those. What I'll do is I'll put those people on an automatic drip for their neighborhood, so that anytime something comes on the market, anytime something goes off the market or something sells, they'll get an email from the MLS saying like, hey, just FYI, this popped up in your neighborhood, or this just sold in your neighborhood. So it keeps their mind fresh because they see it from time to time. As well as I always, with my circle prospecting, especially if it's in my farm, if I do get somebody on the phone, I will write them a handwritten note. My goal is to write at least 5 handwritten notes a day, Some days, if I've reached out to a lot of people that were really nice and just felt like they would be a great nurture in my database, some days I'll write 20, 25 notes. But so handwritten note. I also like to hit at least 20 doors a month that I'll go and knock on from people that I've talked to while circle prospecting. I'll just go knock on the door and introduce myself and say, hey, it was a pleasure to speak with you. I wanted to put a face to a name, and I wanted to see if any situations have changed. Do you know anybody that's thinking about buying or selling now?
Great. And
Um,
is there what if you don't get their email? Then is it just a phone call next month, next quarter? And what does that look like?
Yeah, so it's usually the phone calls to my farm or at least once a month. And then another avenue that I take, and everybody that knows me knows that I'm very active on social media, so I will look for them on social media. I'll look for them on places like nextdoor.com, which is essentially a Facebook for your neighborhood. And so I'll follow up with them there, and I've had some good success with the leads that I've been nurturing in my circle prospecting areas when they do accept my friend request. Again, it's a numbers game. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But the ones that do, they do get to see what I'm doing. They get to see that I'm a real person. They get to see what my passions are when I post them on Facebook. And they get to know me better that way. So that way, when I stop by their door and just to say hello, or if I call them again, they're like, oh, hey, yeah, you're the guy who I'm Facebook friends with. I saw that you just went and did this, blah, blah, blah. So it's really, circle prospecting for me opens the door to build these relationships with people and turn them into mets versus have not met. And that's, again, I try to reach them every possible way. If I could send a carrier pigeon to send a message to them, I would do that too. But it's the phone, it's the email, it's the snail mail, and it's the door knocking and the social media. Between those 5 different ways, I'm getting a good response from the calls that I'm making.
Awesome. And so you did keep saying over and over again, it's a numbers game. It's a contact sport. So what is the typical conversion ratio to expect around circle prospecting?
Yeah, so I think my numbers might be a little bit higher than the average person, but for every 20 dials that I make, I usually can get one person a very solid conversation. Okay. And then from those people, it's about another like 1 to 20 finding either a buyer lead or a seller lead. And that varies by the day, but that's kind of a rough estimate of where we're at right now.
Yeah, that's a great conversion.
Yeah, 1 to 20 is a lot better than what I've seen a lot of people doing. And again, I think it's because my areas are usually very hyper-focused on, like, for example, my neighborhood. And they're places where I'm door knocking. So as I'm making these circle prospecting calls, they're probably a little bit more willing to talk to me. Sometimes around new listings, I won't have the best conversion rates, but at least I'm making some more contacts than I would be if I wasn't making any calls.
Okay, so maybe if you're new, you should be doubling that number, or what would you say if you're?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Double it. Okay. And then the more comfortable that you get on the phone, it seems to get a little bit easier at that point, because it's really about just having conversations with people. It's if you learn your script well enough, it won't sound like a script. It won't sound like a robot. And just trying to. My goal is I like to either make people laugh when I'm on the phone with them, or after I get off the phone with them, I want them to think, hey, you know what? He'd be a great person that I'd love to have a beer with, or I'd love to grab some coffee with. That's kind of my goal. So I think making friends, being a very high I personality, I think making friends with these people is kind of the way to really build a solid database out of them.
That's awesome. So let's just talk about what you would say the greatest for an agent starting out. What's kind of the main challenges around this method of lead gen?
Yeah, I think the first one is just picking up the phone. I think people are very scared of rejection, and it's again, a lot of us get into real estate because we like to work with people, but we don't like to be rejected. So I think the fear of rejection is probably the biggest challenge when it comes to circle prospecting. Then behind that would probably be getting the right information for people. Luckily, you've got Cole Realty Resource there in KW, the Woodlands.
Yep.
It's something that I use also. The information is not always right. Sometimes the seller's gone. Sometimes the line's disconnected. And I feel like people get discouraged a lot of times when they're getting a fax machine or a disconnected number. And that's why, again, we've talked multiple times about it's a numbers game. And so I think not being distracted by the fact that you're going to get wrong numbers is another part of that's challenging. So just understanding, hey, you know what, if 5 of these numbers were wrong today, well, then I need to add some more contacts to that. I need to pull some more phone numbers so that I'm reaching my goal.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I guess another challenge is I think people are also afraid of when they get yelled at. There's one girl specifically on our team who has been knocking it out of the park, making calls this week. And she shared with us that she said, you know, today I only had 7 people yell at me. And she said, I'm feeling crushed, but I made those calls, and we're looking at her numbers, tracking those numbers, saying as long as she keeps up with these activities, her business is going to be through the roof.
That's awesome. So let's go back to fear of rejection. How do you overcome that? What's a tip or trick you would recommend to overcome that?
Yeah, so one of the first things that I always tell people is that if a telemarketer calls you and you tell them that you don't want to work with them and you hang up with them, tomorrow will you remember their name?
No.
Probably not. So if you call somebody and they yell at you or they don't want to talk to you or they say no, by the time you've hung up with them, they probably don't remember who you are, what brokerage you're with. They just know that some realtor called them. So I think in our heads we make it to be a lot bigger than it is. Like I said, I've called people back before who have yelled at me, and the second or the third call to them, maybe a month or 2 later, they didn't yell at me. They may be having a bad day. And so I think it's just one of those things where you have to do it. You have to jump into it. There's no easy way to kind of glide into making these calls. It's just one of those things that you have to go 100% in. And that's not always easy, but I always tell people it's all in our head. Our fear is all in our head. Most people that I call, especially the times, and I'll admit there's times when I get on the phone and I'm nervous about making phone calls. It just comes to me every once in a while. And I always tell myself, you know what, you're not going to die. You'll be okay. By the time you're done making these phone calls, you're going to be a lot better at making these phone calls. And then again, the other part to it is like I say, my goal is to come from contribution. So my goal is to change these people's lives. I always tell people when you're on the phone, even if it's for 30 seconds, how can you change their life for the better? Yeah. Even if it's just saying, hey, you know what, I hope you have a great day. Thanks so much for taking my call. Maybe that's what they needed, and maybe they hang up the call with you and they didn't give you information or they didn't have a lead for you, but they hung up and they just feel good about themselves. That's part of my goal in the circle prospecting, and that's kind of my mindset is, hey, I've got a short period of time to change this person's life, and I really just want to make them feel good at the end of my call.
That's awesome. So is there anything, I know we're actually about to wrap up and open it for any last questions. So what would you leave them with about, even just about business in general, mindset, whatever you would like to share?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when it comes to real estate, I think making phone calls is super important, whether it be to expireds, for sale by owners, circle prospecting, or your sphere. Make those calls because it is a contact sport. It is the people that are the most successful are the ones that are making contact with people. So working your database and just reaching out to people and asking them the simple question, who do you know that's looking to buy a home, sell a home, or invest in real estate? Because I'd love to talk to them. I think you just have to go out there. I always hear people say, don't be a secret agent. The business isn't going to come to you. You have to go out and get it. Yep. So that's kind of where I would leave everybody at.
And I do want to give a shout out and give you the availability to talk about the Young Professionals Network. You are one of the founding starters, correct, of this?
Yes, that's correct. So about 3 years ago, we embarked on a mission to create the Young Professionals group for Keller Williams. So we call it KWYP. our goal was to help facilitate the growth of the next generation of realtors. I believe that according to NAR, realtors under 30% are under 30 years old. That's 2% of the realtor population. Mm-hmm. And so between 30 and 40, that's also a small portion of the entire group. So we wanted to we wanted to maintain focus on the culture and that Keller Williams has, and help facilitate that next generation of leaders into the market, and help provide training for them, to provide chances like this where that we can share our secrets, share what our best tips and tricks are. And it's been great. We're 3 years in now, and it's been really good, and we're really excited about the growth, and we encourage everybody to check out kyp.org to learn more about the organization.
Awesome. And I am a part of that, and I appreciate all the people and the resources that we share in there. There's some, I mean, we get Diana, we get Mo, we get everybody pretty much in some way, talking to them and hearing them speak. So it's a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
It's huge. There's not many other places where you can get the top executives of the largest real estate brokerage in the world sitting on a call with you, sometimes with only 10 other people, mm-hmm. and you on the call with these people, showing you how to build the life that you want to build, and how to build the business that you want to own. And you don't get many opportunities like that. So we're glad that we could facilitate that for our members.
Thank you. Well, we have a chat bar, and I'm not going to unmute it just because it gets crazy. So if anyone has some questions for Phillip, if you could go ahead and type it in the chat bar, we would be happy to ask him. So I'm going to give a moment for that. The last few times, it seems like we've covered everybody's questions because no one had any. So we'll see if that's the case tonight.
Hopefully in all of my talking, I answered everything that everybody wanted to know.
You did very well. You covered a lot. Oh, okay. So yeah. We got a question. Is there a good resource for getting cell phone numbers?
Yeah, so Cole Realty Resource does offer cell phone numbers. I think Mojo will also offer cell phone numbers. Cole Realty Resource is the one that I use the most, and it does have the cell phone numbers, and they just recently came out with email addresses too.
Oh, okay, very cool. So yeah. Have you heard, I'm side noting, it's asking, does it link it to a property address? It should,
the
right?
Phone numbers, yeah. So great question. Yeah. So Cole will give you the address of the owner for all the houses. So it'll give you all the addresses. It'll give you information like how long they've lived in the home. If you really want to dig down on some of these homeowners, it'll tell you how long they've been there. Sometimes it'll tell you which bank they use to mortgage the home and how long they've had the mortgage. So there's some great information in there.
Awesome. I have a side note question. Have you heard or looked into Espresso Agent yet?
I have heard of it. Again, being part of the Keller Williams system, we're very linked to what everybody else is doing, and we share those. There's a lot of agents who their follow-up system they're using Espresso Agent, and they're having some great results with it. I personally haven't used it, but from what I've seen in listening kind of to what other agents are talking about, they're having some great results.
Yeah, I know one of my coaching clients who's big into circle prospecting is signed up for it, and he's doing it focused on expireds actually. So it sends Espresso Agent, it gets you texts, cell phones, and also emails as well, but it has it's a data CRM for that, and it will send emails to these expireds and FSBOs, and it helps generate responses through email and text message. So
I've seen some good stuff. When I'm getting emails for these people, I have built out for our team, we have built out a campaign, and they look like little emails that are just like, took me 5 seconds to write, just like, hey, just checking back in. I know that your house was on the market. It's not on the market anymore. Have you still thought about selling that? Would love to talk to you. Give me a call.
Yeah.
There's no fancy graphics. There's no links and stuff. It's just a short email that looks like I'm saying, like I'm just popping in to say, hey, I'm just checking back in. How's everything coming along?
Yeah, exactly. And I've had people, he's had great results already, and so has the community that I've noticed. So I was just curious if you've tapped into that yet.
Not yet, but it's something that definitely I love to look at new tech kind of stuff and new systems. So it's something that I'll definitely check out.
Well, great. Well, it looks like that was it for tonight. I really appreciate your time, Phillip, and I look forward to seeing you in about, 3 weeks? We'll be in New Orleans.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So thank you so much for having me on the call today. If anybody has questions, I'd love to answer them whenever they have those questions.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure to send out your information to everyone. And this has been recorded. So once I figure out how to compress this file, I'll get that over to you.
Perfect. That'd be great.
Thank you, everyone, for your time. Thanks, Phillip.
Yeah. Thank you. You're welcome.
Bye.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.